everyone. Can you hear me? I have a little bit of a quiet voice, so I'm going to compete with the whole of the NEC. So wish me luck. If you can't hear me, just raise your hand and I will try and talk louder. But what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to cast your minds back to Sunday evening, if you can remember that much. I can see some people going, what day is it? How are you feeling? Were you excited about going back to work? Did you have an idea that you wanted to go and share with your colleagues? Were you laughing? Or were you, oh goodness, I'm going back to work. I've got that meeting. I've got that report to write. Just have a little reflection now. I'm not going to ask you, but out of a score of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest of like, I'm really excited, where would you put yourself on that scale? And we're going to come back to it. I'm Kirstin Furber. I am passionate about creating cultures where people can be their best selves, organizations can win in this very competitive world we live in. And I have a personal commitment that by 2025, I want to inspire 1 million people to banish the Sunday night blues and come to work and be themselves. Now today, we're at the Learning Conference, and there's 3 things I'm going to talk about over the next 20 minutes to give you some time to ask some questions. And I'm going to break my presentation up into 3 areas. First of all, I'm going to talk about some of the trends that we're experiencing, things that we should be really thinking about from people expert perspective when we're thinking about how we want to inspire people. I'm then going to talk about what is this human learning environment like, where you can be your best self. And then I'm going to end on 5 characteristics I believe are needed to build a human culture, and what are some of the practical things that we need to do as people experts to really drive and cultivate that culture. So I believe the 3 trends. I'm going to purposely not talk about the political environment because I don't believe we have enough time in this session today to talk through it. So that's an important trend and an important factor, but I'm going to put that aside for the moment. But what I want to focus on is technology is such a big thing for us at the moment. We know it's really changed how we work. Gone are the days where we used to always have to go into the office. We can work in a hotel, we can work at home, we can work on the beach. And with technology has come the lots of data. How many times have you been in a meeting where someone has said, oh, what about that? I'm not sure about that. And you've gone straight to your laptop, found out the information, and put that into the meeting and made a decision. And that's brilliant. It allows us to make decisions faster. However, there is now more data. There is so much more data for us to make decisions from. And also, artificial intelligence is starting to predict future information. So with that, organizations are starting to really feel they need new skills to help with people developing insights, problem solving, to manage all this data we have. We'll also be very familiar with robots. They're taking away repetitive tasks and new jobs are being created. So for organizations, this is a big shift. It's about restructuring your organization for these new jobs and thinking about how do you build out these new skills. The second trend is us as consumers. We're quite fussy. We want more. We don't want to pay very much for it. We want it personalized. And we want it done immediately. Who knew that you could order your favorite food sitting or standing where you are today through an app? If you do order food, I won't be upset. Could be complicated. But the point I'm making is that we want everything when we want to have it. And famously, Steve Jobs said, actually, customers don't really know what they need. We're going to tell them. So organizations are now starting to create things we don't know we even need. So watch this space. So what does this mean for organizations? We're starting to really think about what's that employee journey look like? What's it look like to respond online? How do we want our customers to respond online? As people experts, we're actually starting to hire in UX designers to think about that employee journey, to think about how employees want to interact with us in an organization from a learning perspective or from a hiring perspective. So things are really starting to shift. And a third trend, no surprises, is talent. Now, the war for talent is no new thing. McKinsey published the article over 20 years ago. The challenge, I believe, now is the global talent agenda has got even more complicated. If you think about technology, it's opened up more people that we can hire on a global basis, and there's more competition. The new generation want to work differently as well. They want to work in a portfolio career. They want to work for 3 companies at once. And some talent's actually saying, you know what, I don't want to work for an organization. I want to go and set up my own company. And we're starting to see a real uptick in startups and entrepreneurs. Now, what does this mean for organizations? It means that employer brand and that attraction ability is even more important. And I'm not just talking about that shiny employer brand. Talent are starting to really scratch the surface and see what's underneath. Is it really true? Do they really mean that? And we know with social media, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, it's very, very easy to get underneath in terms of what that brand is. So if I take a little summary about what those trends are, I believe organizations now are in the most challenging competitive time. They need new ideas to disrupt the market. To have new ideas, they need people to thrive. They need to be their best selves. They need to learn, and they need to be challenged. So what does this human learning environment look like? Well, it's simple. It's an organization where you can be yourself. You're not putting your cloak on. You're not pretending to be someone else. You're not putting energy into something that you don't believe in. You really are being yourself. You're having your ideas heard and contributed to. You feel valued. And when you feel valued, you do your best work. And through that, you generate new ideas. And you get the job done in the best way. You feel inspired. You experiment. You get it wrong. You're not blamed. You learn. Productivity increases because you feel motivated. Positive energy creates ideas versus negative energy of complaining. If you're making work better, I believe the world will be better. So, can we go back to Sunday evening? Remember your score. If you were going into an environment to the one I've just described, where would you put yourself on that rating? Just have a little think. I saw a little smile go up there. And I'm going to ask anyone to raise their hands if the score was higher. Okay. Some people are like, I don't even know when Sunday night was. I'm just so confused with the week. You get my point. So, how do you build an environment that's human and you can learn? And I'm going to talk through 5 characteristics which build the foundations of that culture. And I'm going to do it in a human way. I'm going to share it through some of the photographs I've taken over the last few years to really land some of these key points and provide some practical ideas and thoughts around it. So the first characteristic is purpose. Tower Bridge. a very iconic London landmark built in the late 1880s. And if you think back to people who worked on that bridge, they were very clear in terms of the purpose. They were building a bridge so people could walk from one side of the Thames to the other, so that boats could go through the Thames both ways, and if you were a boat which was quite large, you could open up the gate to go through. So they were very, very clear in terms of what they were doing to contribute. So in an organisations where you want to have an environment where you can be your best self, it's about ensuring that people are clear on the purpose of your organisation, and you're clear in terms of what are you doing to contribute to that purpose. Now, in the world of wanting different ideas, encouraging different ideas and disruption, purpose, strategy and direction is even more important. And why is that? It provides the guardrails. It's really important now that we ensure that people have ideas, that they don't go off-piste off the entire strategy, because that's not good use of energy or productivity. It will completely upset the person who's got the idea, and importantly, it's used in the wrong way. So providing those guardrails to allow the organisation to move in one direction, to create those ideas, means everyone then is on the same page and they've got the responsibility to move forward. So what does that mean for us as people experts? What do we need to do? I really encourage you to go back into your organisations and just randomly ask people, what's the purpose? What's the strategy? And see what reaction you get. Obviously look at your engagement stats, but go around and ask people and get that human connection when you ask those questions. And if you're starting to think, actually, you know what, it's not very, very clear, do something about it. And what are the things you can do? You can continue to coach and support your leaders to ensure when they're communicating, they're always upfront with the strategy and the purpose as a reminder. As learning experts, it's about connecting your leadership programs, your training programs, your curriculum all the time with here's the purpose and here's why we're doing it, and this new skill will help you contribute in our organisation. It's that constant message to get people across. The second characteristic is authenticity, and I know we hear a lot about authenticity at the moment. This is my cat. The reason why I have put a picture of my cat is I believe animals are very interesting. They're always authentic. They don't have to put a face on to go, oh, how shall I feel today? I've got something to hide. Very simple for them. How am I going to eat? How am I going to sleep? I need to survive. Where am I going to get my food from? And is there a problem that I need to deal with? It's as simple as that. And organisations that are authentic really support trust. And that's trust internally in the organisation and externally in the organisation. And that really starts with leaders. So leaders that provide messages in the company, which are human messages from their perspective on message, really provides that authenticity. For those people who gone are the days where you'd say, here's our corporate messages, I'm now going to parrot them out to the organisation, no one is going to follow and no one is going to trust. So it's about encouraging your leaders to put those messages in their own words to show that they're human. And perfectionism is really tough. You can't be authentic if you're trying to perfect things all the time. So encourage your leaders to say, you know what, I made a mistake. I made a mistake, I've got it covered, I'm really sorry, and now this is what we're going to do. Because that shows people it's okay to make a mistake, and it's okay to find a solution around it. And it really opens up that vulnerability. And with vulnerability comes authenticity. So what can you all do? I know you will coach and manage and support your leaders, but give them feedback. Even if it's a small team meeting, say to them, that worked really well. That really your humanism really came out when you spoke about that. Or that area could have been dialed up a little bit and could have been even more powerful. That feedback is always so critical and so important. The other thing I think in terms of the spirit of learning, in terms of perfectionism, I do believe sometimes organisations can get very internalised. So we're always thinking, oh, how does our organisation work? I don't know what's going on outside. And obviously this conference today is a great opportunity to really look outside. But again, I would encourage your leaders to bring external in, to really start showing that they are learning all the time, that they don't know everything, they don't know all the answers, and they're authentic in terms of how they do that. So encourage those speakers, encourage those podcasts, encourage those articles for those discussions. The third characteristic is telling your story. And here is an amphitheatre in Greece. I was there last year, and we went for just as part of the sunset, as you can see from the picture. And what's very clever about amphitheatres is the way they're designed. And I tested it. So went right down into the bottom, into the middle, took a stone and actually a pair of keys, dropped it in the middle, and the sound resounds all the way through the theatre. It's very incredible, built many, many thousands of years ago. But this is a great example for me in terms of how do organisations communicate. It's very difficult when you've got large volumes of organisations, lots of people, maybe in different locations. How do you tell your story and how do you get your message out? And the good thing about technology, there are so many different platforms now to get your message out. So it's about using all of those and thinking about your audience. Are some people extroverts? Do they like to debate it? Do they want that two-way conversation? Some people like to read about what's going on, and then they want to reflect, and then they want to ask questions. Some people want short, sharp bits of information. We've got WhatsApp, we've got Slack, we've got email, we've got conference calls, we've got face-to-face. Use all the different platforms available to get your message out. And the important thing now is it's not about broadcasting, particularly with social media. People want to interact. They don't just want to have, here's the message, off you go, it's done, it's landed. They want to debate, they want to ask questions, they want to talk about it. So when you're thinking about telling your story, ensure that you've got that two-way ability to ask those questions so that you can really land those messages about what you're about and what that human learning environment is. So what does this mean for us as experts? And particularly with that lens of learning. It's about sharing learning. So anyone in your organisation, if they've been on a conference, if they've spoken at a conference, if they've been on a training event, if they've done an MBA, whatever it might be, small, large, ask them to share their learning. It's very powerful to do that because you will start to see that those individuals will translate their learning into your organisation, and it's that translation that's so important. The other thing you'll start to see is, wow, I've actually got a lot of talent already in the organisation. How do we leverage it? How do we use it? So it's really encouraging everyone to share their learning. And also, I believe with leaders, it's really saying to them, you don't know everything. Ask questions, listen right through the organisation, because you're going to pick up some real nuggets of information that's going to help drive that strategy and land it. So the last two characteristics, one of them is very critical and key, and that's around about diversity and inclusion. And the picture I took here, we were talking just before, is in China. And it's the Terracotta Army. For those of you who don't know, there are 8,000 warriors. I appreciate they're all men. Hold that thought. What I wanted to describe, though, of the 8,000 soldiers that were found, every face is different. It's carved individually. Who knew how long that would take? But it really represents that we are absolutely all different. And I really believe diversity is about sharing ideas and different perspectives, and how can environment really help with supporting that. And I think there's two examples of that. And I think as people, experts, we have a very critical, important role to share different ideas and thoughts. We're seeing boards, we're seeing teams now becoming more diverse. There is more work to do. And with that comes a challenge for the chair. And also anyone who has to now manage a meeting. You've got many different contributions and different ideas that you need to hear. So these people need support about how do you facilitate a meeting to ensure that you get everyone's voice heard and also you come to a conclusion. And this is going to, I believe, be a really important skill going forward into the future. And I talked about it a little bit sort of up front in the other characteristics, but about perspective. How can you encourage perspective in your organization? How do you get the top and the lower of the organization speaking together? I'm sure many of you have done some reverse mentoring. It's very successful, it's very easy to do, and it's very, very valuable to really give people different perspectives. So encourage whatever mechanism that is, whether it's asking questions, open forums, reverse mentoring, but getting the whole organization and putting people in different shoes really helps with driving that perspective and driving those ideas. So the final characteristic is workplace. Workplace has quite a big, broad definition now. I thought I'd take it a little bit further. This was in Cuba. This is the workplace of the band. They have a cup of coffee, they play, it's sunny, fantastic, what a great workplace. Workplace now means that we have different challenges for us, particularly when we're helping people to learn. Because it's about when do you want to learn? When is the best time for you to learn? If you think about yourselves, are you better learning in the morning? Or are you better learning late at night? And we now have the technology to support some of that. We know that learning now has changed. It used to be a number of years ago of let's go off site for 2 weeks, we will learn something, then we will come back and make sure we can embed it into every day. Productivity doesn't allow us to spend lots of time away from our office, our email, whatever facility that is. And also there is a challenge on budgets now. We want to spend our money on platforms and virtual learning rather than conference venues. So with all that in mind, with training curriculums, with face-to-face learning, with podcasts, with all the different elements of learning you can do, when you're designing it, really think about the different learning styles, the time of day, how people like to learn. Are they introverts? Are they extroverts? Do they have different mental, physical health that you need to really think about so that you can really be human and create that environment for everybody? And we all know the importance of bite-sized learning. So, as experts, I would really think about be marketeers, think about your audience, think about what messages you want to get across, think about how you want that learning to land, and build and design your learning around that. So, in summary, no company is the same. You know your organization better than anyone else. Of course, you can take best practice, but you know what's going to work, where you can shift and push the organization, and where you know what, that's really not going to work for us. There is not one size fits all. Every organization is unique as every individual is unique. It's about taking the foundations and building the environment and listening so people can really be themselves. Now, I've said a lot. I've skated over some massive topics very, very quickly. And I wanted to leave you with 2 pieces of advice, if I may. The first one is be human yourself. So first of all, think about how do you like to learn? When do you want to learn? How do you like to be communicated to? Because that will help you support other people. And the second thing is, going back to the so much data out there, pick 2 things. Pick 2 things that's going to make the biggest impact in your organization so that your organization can disrupt the market and can win. And do those 2 things really, really well and keep evolving them, because that's where you're going to get traction and that's where you're going to feel, you know what, I contributed and I feel valued in the organization. So I believe we've got a little bit of time for questions, and in the spirit of everything I've just talked about in terms of 2-way communication, some of you may have questions now, some of you may want to talk afterwards. I will be around. I also have a blog and LinkedIn, so if people prefer to throw their questions out to me in a written format, then please do that. So thank you so much for listening this morning. I hope you have a great time at the conference. And if anyone has any questions now, please raise your hands and the roving mic will follow you.
Any questions?
So I'm around later. I'm just going to be probably standing here. So thank you. If you want to have comments, questions, very much welcomed. And thank you very much for listening again.